Hello, dear hearts. Thank you so much for connecting. Your interest in serving this seeker's quest, this truth seeker's quest, is something that gives me fuel to be able to continue with what I do in a non-linear way, working with the various dimensions that are not limited to the way that we understand linear time. This full moon in Capricorn, which is actually the start of a double full moon in Capricorn, depending on where you are on this earth, doesn't only declare the entry of the sun into Cancer, as well as the solstice, depending on where you are on the earth. It is either the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere and the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. This full moon in Capricorn taking place on the 22nd of June 2024 to peak at around 4 a.m. in Thessaloniki, in Greece, Europe, which of course implies that many of us will be experiencing this full moon's energy on the 22nd, but it also starts in many places on this earth on the 21st. So consider the 21st through to the 23rd really bringing us to terms with what is a Capricorn full moon. And because it's one of two, depending on where you are on this earth, followed by another one in July, double full moon in the same constellation, not in the same month, but in the same constellation, definitely enhances this next whole month period as focus point, a stellar point, a central point, being the message of the sea goat, Capricorn. And this is where I will give you as much as I can to prepare for this, in combination with Solstice, which you can tune into that information and listen to that, so you can create the necessary links or read what I've put together to connect all the dots here. But Solstice and the solar energy of Cancer, with the sun entering Cancer on the solstice, as well as the opposing energy, that axis of Capricorn Cancer, full moon being Capricorn, it really is actually quite world-like driven, constant grounding, and very sudden when it comes to bringing us back to our responsibilities, our commitment, our debts, what we owe, what is owed to us, everything that revolves around family, home, where we live, how we relate to our intimate life, that is those who are of immediate connection to us, what we consider as our safe haven. There's a huge link to the elders with this access. This is why there's a very serious component to the Cancer, Capricorn, Cancer axis, because the constellation of the crab, the constellation of the sea goat, Capricorn, both are discipline-like, quite protective, and also hardworking in very different ways. And there are so many axes in astrology, okay? And if we look at the zodiac in 12 points, divided twice, we look at 6-point positioning, every opposite, every axis. In that, you can understand that the elements play a massive component. And here we're looking at water and earth. Earth ruling Capricorn, water ruling Cancer. But if you look at Capricorn, you have to also understand that the sea goat is actually rising from the depths, the deepest point in our understanding of the sea, of the ocean, and is capable at the very same time to arrive to the peak of any mountain. So that understanding of what is below linked to what is above, thinking of the peak of the mountain as the highest point in life, and the depths of the ocean as being the most subterranean levels of the psyche. There is actually a lot of elder-like understanding stemming from, again, the Saturnian, Saturn-infused Capricorn energy and teaching of Capricorn, which is a difficult teaching for so many of us because Saturn is always tough and rules time, and Capricorn, being ruled by Saturn, knows how to use its time in an earthy way. And we can all learn from this. Cancer, on the contrary, doesn't arrive to the same depths as Capricorn. In fact, Cancer, being very much a homebody, likes to have its protective shell, wants to be left to reside in places that are relatively shallow. Why? Because they are already so immersed by the ocean, so taken by bodies of water wherein they understand the language, they understand what it means to be sensitive, what it means to connect with the not so visible and obvious states of experience. And that receptivity, the water being their home, right, creates their need for a protective shell to process and then be able to also provide a lot of gifts and give back. The myth around constellation, the crab versus the sea goat, Capricorn, very different. And I would like to hone in on the sea goat, a full moon in Capricorn, because this axis of 2 full moons is a Capricornian theme, and it is going to teach us quite heavily about time. And time is something we can relate to, all of us, in a unique way, because we all have our own speed, we all have our own interpretation of how things flow and move, and we all relate to time with our own understanding. So for some of us, it's not even about the quality, it's more about the experience. And what I mean by that is, even if you're all given 24 hours a day, there could be a good portion of that where you have absolutely nothing on your mind and you're not even aware or in your body. You could just be switched off, out of reach, not accessible, right? So how would you interpret that experience? Some of us might find that pleasurable. If we look at it in an analytical way, it's actually not exactly quality in terms of time, right? Because time is something you'd want to save, you'd want to use the most of or maximize, especially if you're looking at it from a Capricorn's mindset. But again, it's about experience for the individual versus quality anyway, right? How do we change this though? Because quality should be a priority if we're approaching the concepts of time. And in that, what I mean is you, as someone who has the 24 hours, so-called 24 hours a day, whether you can grab them, touch them, experience them, hold them or not, it's happening to you, and it's clicking by in the, I guess, 3D dimension we're in, right? So, yes, so this quality, would it be fair to say that quality is determined by the value of time? Quality is determined by how it's also worked with, just how profitable is it. And when we think of profit, we're not talking about just the materialistic dimension, because there are all the different planes of understanding within every message in astrology. There's, of course, degenerate states, the intermediate, basic understanding, the exalted, the advanced levels of understanding, and all can be used beneficially or with the wrong mind, the wrong understanding. There's that dual aspect, and that's why in astrology we obtain everything, the understanding, the language, we communicate regarding such things to go beyond these boundaries, to go beyond what binds us. It's ultimately we're trying to be free of, even astrology here, and of course time, right? But to come back to the message of this double full moon in Capricorn, it's about understanding not just the materialistic, profitable component of the value of time as one way of looking at it, but also profit being something that is beneficial at the end of the day. So, of course, Capricorn's teaching is to understand this realm we're in, this so-called 3D dimension, right? And through understanding it, through going through its hardship, because there's no way anyone can be in this 3D dimension without having an experience of suffering, of pain. As sad as it is, it's the truth, and we can't refute that. Everything, living creature that has been birthed in this realm, in this 3D dimension, also will be ended. A death point will take place, and between those two there's a living component. Now Capricornian energy really understands where they are. Capricorn is very much linked to the bones, bone as a function, bone as the end of life, bone as something that structurizes, everything that we are. We can't look at bones in an elementary way. If Capricorn rules over bones, the skeleton, of our being, of all bones in general that can be found in this realm, there needs to be a respectful, deeper view into that, because bones, through all the ages, have had significant resemblance to more than just what they seem or look like. They're obviously of great symbolic reference, and in symbolism you'll notice the bones in many different cultures and belief systems, and this is obviously something that we're not just looking at in the recent few hundred years, for thousands of years, of course, and even before that. And look, if you look at forensics, if you look at archaeology, there's so much you can understand through bones. There's so much that you can also have transmitted to you through bones. That's why, if you look at the Catholic Church, if you look at Christianity, bones are kept very sacredly as a place of veneration. And they say that the saints that are having their bones preserved, still you can receive an important transmission there. If you look at ancient Egypt and how bodies have been mummified, and what that means to the presence of their being in this considerate idea of worshipping the people in question, the beings in question, who we can access the energy of that, of their being through their bones, through their body. But in this case, bones speaking in the language of representation of what Capricorn rules, and bones are structure. Bones are what we find after everything, right? If we're deconstructing the body as it is, what's the last thing you find? It's the bones. After everything happens, after all the elements, dissolve, the bones somehow stick around, in this 3D dimension. And why do you think that is? You should take a moment to contemplate on that, because it's quite linked, not just obviously, but it's also linked in ways that we cannot describe through speech to what Capricorn can do and how it can rule our lives as a benefactor when we need to touch in and tap into that energy, especially understanding where it sits in our own star map. And why I say this is because the elders, our grandfathers, our grandmothers, our ancestors, those who have come before us, the elderly, those who are wise, who have accumulated wisdom, who have understood, who are knowledgeable, who have learnt, right, are often ruled by the Capricorn theme. And this link to Saturn and how we must respect our elders, we must care for our elders when we are understanding Saturnian energy, is again proof of the result that is beyond the elementary, the infant state, the juvenile side to things. It's not the Fool in the tarot. It's not that commencement point where you have to have a lot of idealism and belief and almost be completely ignorant to be able to leap off into the unknown. Not at all. It's actually in the traditional tarot, and I have to link this up so you understand, it's seen, Capricornian energy and Saturn energy is actually seen as the major arcana placement of the Devil card. And the Devil has not only been the Devil has also been the obstacle maker, the illusion, okay, in traditional tarot symbolism. So imagine the obstacle maker, the illusion, the 3D dimension depicted by some. I think even Salvador Dali had a very interesting way of referring to the Devil card in his own interpretation of the tarot, which I'm quite fond of. But what I want to say here, yes, is that to really understand where we are, the 3D dimension that we're in, the Capricorn energy and constellation ruled by Saturn, it can offer so much lessons, life lessons, progress, metaphorical and literal, through the way that it creates its challenging time offering. And what I mean by this is when we're not able to understand how to have quality time, we then are faced with more of what we owe, and the web of the limitations of this 3D dimension become the host, So understanding the Capricornian message, just like the Devil card in the traditional tarot, or the obstacle maker, the illusion, is like understanding what binds us, because a huge component to the materialistic plane is the fact that we believe it, that it's real, that it's actually, all we have, that there's nothing more than that. And those of us that get too caught up on the self-serving component, which is just about what we can get, and what we can get is always also what society almost encourage us to focus on, then it's very difficult to have valuable time because you're always chasing your tail, so to speak. And the Capricornian teaching, understanding the realm we're in, the materialistic plane, the 3D dimension, understanding time and what rules that 3D dimension, gives us then that schooling, that process of education, to understand what we need to be free of. Understanding where we are equals to understanding what we need to be free of. And within that dimension, wishing for, calling in on this path, longing for an authentic path, which leads to an authentic presence, which gets us out of what binds us on an illusory level, on a level that is, again, obstacle prone because it isn't permanent. And when we say obstacle prone because it isn't permanent, the fact that it isn't permanent isn't the reason why it's obstacle prone. The reason why it's obstacle prone is because the illusion creates a sense of it being permanent when it's actually not. You get it? So the impermanence component isn't the issue. That's actually a blessing. The problem is the illusion is the 3D dimension almost makes you expect things to be permanent or fixed and not able to change or metamorphosize in any way. And that's the limited, degenerate point when we look at the Capricornian constellation, the darker degree of Saturn. When we rise to an intermediate level, we start to think of the wisdom of the ancients, the ancestors, the lineages in all, who has come before us. We start to think about questioning the 3D dimension and how we use our time. And then the structural component, why the reference to the bones came in, is very strong, because structure is everything to get through all the challenges of this dimension. We obviously need discipline, and the structure that is created with a supportive discipline, not one that we're too hard on ourselves, but of course one that comes with a certain sense of order, fairness, and respect for those who have come before us, for our elders, for the wisdom keepers of the past, as well as the past through past experience, not turning a blind eye to the way things have gone down, but to learn from what we've lived, what others have lived. So referencing to the past being an extremely important point with this intermediate state of Capricorn. And then, of course, when we go to the exalted state, the value of time becomes one of the main focus points, because you no longer want to be bound by time. You don't want to be enslaved by it. You don't want to be seeing it in a way that is incorrect. You want to have the right understanding of what it is, right? And how it rules over you, what it expects of you, and how you can grab the reins to make the most of your time for it to be valuable, for it to be transformed into having value, having weight, having authenticity, having you really present with it, and steering it in a way wherein you're making the most of whatever you have, right, when it comes to time. And exalted Capricorn can really understand the material plane, the 3D dimension, through hard work, through effort, through the sweat that comes in, understanding the depths, what lies below, but still wanting that peak of the mountain and having an altruistic, more grander, beyond 3D aspiration or intention. So just within the Capricorn constellation, you know, you could say there is so much juice, so much richness available for a truth seeker, because the challenges are so obvious and they're there. And just as the Devil card depicts Capricorn, depicts the Saturnian force, it also tells you very directly, there is a devil here, there is an obstacle here, there is an illusion here, there is bondage here, there is entrapment here. But I'm very clear about it. I'm showing it to you. I'm not hiding it, because there's the Devil card, right? So you want to see it for what it is, or you want to pretend that it's not there? Where does our own authenticity live in this? Are we going to pretend it's not there, or are we going to say, well, actually, this is entrapping, this is challenging, this is restrictive, this is limiting, this is enslaving? And then through understanding that, understanding where we are, want to seek a true freedom, want to seek out the truth, want to be free of what binds us, right? And one thing I love about the myth of Capricorn is long time ago, thousands and thousands of years ago, mind you, in the ancient Greek astrological system, Capricorn was also depicted as a sea goat for a reason, because Pan was showing up so kindly in his support and his sacrifice and what he has done to protect the you could say the divinity of all divinities in the sacred masculine form of ancient Greece, which is known as Zeus, Dias, Zeus. And, Pan received his great placement in the sky as the Capricornian constellation. He was placed there in the heavens, in the sky, being thanked, being dearly thanked by Dias, by Zeus, by Zeus, for how he fought to protect divinity, how he also disguised himself as a sea goat, connecting with the water element, becoming a fish, to also, ensure that certain beings that were attacking divinity were subdued, were not able to succeed in that. And the sea goat is also known in ancient Sumerian, Babylonian astrological context that goes back, as you can imagine, more than 5,000 years. The sea goat is referenced quite strongly because, again, we're looking at the equinoxes, we're looking at the solstice points, and these things are huge when we look at ancient civilizations and how they related to time. We have our smartphones now, and we have calculators, and we have all sorts of technologies that we don't really need to maximize the capacity of our minds to work with, right? But back then, it's amazing what was created, which we now have an electronic form of, was actually created by the ancients to understand and work with time. And this division of 4, the equinoxes and the solstices, again, related to solar positioning, the force of the light, how much light impacted the earth, and how time was understood through that on a cyclic level. So again, if we simplify this very simply, we can say light is an enormously important component when understanding time. However, it doesn't get respected in the interpretation of time because there has been a lot of, I guess, the right word would be belief, more so in 3D time then understanding the light function in how time cyclically happens. And the light function, light as a force, as solar energy, as cosmic energy, is what comes down to us here where living beings dwell, is more important than what we then calculate and say this is, what it must be. So if we go back to the original understanding, right now what we're celebrating, the solstice, as well as the sun's entry into Cancer and this full moon in Capricorn, is exactly that, is the force of light and how that is respected, measured, how that also creates life, takes it away, what it does for us here in this limited dimension, and of course inspires us. The light function inspires us for things that are beyond this limited structured state. So the bones are a great reference and point of understanding, because that's all that really gets left behind as proof, right, of death, of decay. But it's also proof of those who were before here among us, and respecting that is one of the key things in our own lives personally. What teachings do we have coming from elders, ancestors? What do we need to understand too from the older version of us, since time can't be linear if we're working with the development of our own quest. We can also just imagine and envision this older version of us in this life, and what does that part of us, that wise old version of us, wish to tell us, wish to empower us. What does it want to tell us? What is it saying? I'm sure it has a message, just as the little us, the inner child, the infant at times has its message. So respecting that peak of the mountain component through not fearing the depths and what needs to be understood down below. Yes, so another thing about Capricornian energy is it's also been known to provide this passage for souls, that are, I guess, going from one dimension to another through their own traveling process or way through. Because if you think of Saturnian energy, and if you think of this Capricorn presence, it is also structurizing all of this through also delegating what we owe, what we should receive, in many ways, monitoring that very closely. And that's why you'll find Capricornian energy is so good at the mathematics, at the tedious side to profit and loss statements, at the tedious side of just what has to be given back or taken, and value in time, the weight in time, so that we are going beyond the order and the structure in a way described here. It could also be something as simple as, if we look at the altruistic point, what do we do with our best aspirations and intentions on a daily basis that are serving the greater good, serving the highest good, serving the authenticity? Remember how I was saying with the Devil card, it's a very obvious statement. It's not hiding. Capricorn energy, Saturnian energy is not hiding that there is an illusory component here. There is an obstacle here. There is a limitation, a bondage and a boundary here in the 3D dimension, right? It's not lying. It's saying this is how it is. But I rule over this because I want you to understand where you are. And I want you to stand up to the challenge, to get free of the chains that bind you. right? So invoking this full moon energy, it's going to bring us opportunities for great work, hard work, beneficial work, but it's also going to teach us about time. And since we have the double entity of a full moon, right? It's a maximum visibility. You know, the full moon will be at maximum visibility, 100% full, glowing over our Earth twice in Capricorn, sitting in the constellation of Capricorn, right up there, next to the most brightest star. And it will make all that is that constellation visible, bring all of its light reflected back down to this Earth for us, so we can get that cosmic DNA, we can get that teaching. And the solar opposition in Cancer will enhance that, will provide further illumination to what is reflected and offered to this land, to the beings of it, to all that is inhabiting this place. And therefore, we have to see first and foremost what we are getting, what is being received on this full moon now that's taking place in Capricorn, and then map all that takes place until the one coming up in July. See how the initial message of this full moon seals itself during the full moon in July. Find your own personal truth there, because it will be bigger than the average full moon cycle, month in and month out. And I can assure you, with the solstice here very firmly, the solar shift, which takes place as well on the solstice, and having on a planetary level, on an astrological level right now in 2024, a lot of contemplative points, a lot of planets about to go into retrograde as well, and planetary bodies. Yes, the road of contemplation opens. So we can get more involved in everything that has been just mentioned, and definitely work hard to read our reach our materialistic goals, but also, again, learn about time and how we can make it profitable, valuable, how we can, I guess, learn from where we are, this dimension we're in, and for the utmost benefit. So thank you so, so much. May all be auspicious. Bye-bye.